to give some introductory remarks. So Jason Silva, take it away.
Hi, everybody. Jason Silva, Town Administrator. I'm here to give brief welcome remarks. So I'll just briefly introduce you to the work that's happened over the last, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years, and how we got to this point. The Board of Selectmen created a Green Marblehead Committee that's comprised of stakeholders, department heads, local organizations that care about sustainability and resiliency and climate change. A couple of years ago now, the purpose of that committee was to focus on creating a climate visioning document, which is posted on our website. I'm sure many of you have seen it. We created that visioning document with the input of, we went through a similar process, a public engagement piece. We've worked with Mapc on the creation of that document, which was the result of a lot of good work within the community. A lot of people care about these issues. And the reason we put that together was that there were a lot of ideas and a lot of initiatives that people wanted to put forward, but there wasn't a lot of planning and thought given to how we wanted to go about doing that. So the visioning document collected data. It also created some action items as a result. And this is the next obvious step for us. We were fortunate enough to establish a relationship with Mapc. They are one of my favorite organizations on the planet, for sure. This work would not be possible without their support and expertise. And so after the climate visioning process, Brooks Winter, who you're going to hear from in a minute, reached out to me and said, hey, there might be this other opportunity to work together. We have a cohort of communities that host municipal light plants that are interested in working towards creating a true comprehensive net zero plan for the community. And so we jumped on that opportunity. Unfortunately, we were successful in receiving funding and again, having the opportunity and pleasure to work with Mapc. So there's a lot of work that's been going on in the background. The Green Marblehead Committee created a subcommittee that's been working diligently with Brooks and Mapc. We've had the good fortune of interacting with the 3 other communities we're working with, Belmont, Ipswich, and the city of Peabody, to learn from them on what they're doing, what's working in their communities, what's successful in their communities, and what we may be able to borrow and implement in the town of Marblehead. In fact, we had a meeting this morning with that cohort, heard from the town of Belmont on some exciting work that they're doing. So this is, I'd say, the kickoff of the public process for the net zero plan. And so we're really excited that you all have been able to join us tonight. We're really excited, like I said, to work with Mapc again and the organizations and stakeholders and residents who really care about these issues. And I look forward to hearing all of your input and feedback as we move ahead. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Jason. And thanks to everyone for being here. I'm Brooks Winter. I'm a senior clean energy specialist at the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, and I will be your host and MC for the evening. So just a quick reminder, this meeting is being recorded. If you don't want to be recorded, you're welcome to turn off your video and audio. But if you can, we'd love to see your faces and have your engagement. There will be breakout groups later. So just wanted to mention that. Before we dive in, just wanted to do a quick interactive icebreaker activity. This is an icebreaker here on the screen. So if you could let us know in the chat what your favorite thing about fall in Marblehead is. I know you all as a nautical community really like your summers, but I'm a fall fan myself. So take a moment, let us know in the chat what's your favorite thing about fall in Marblehead. Clear blue skies, youth soccer. I'm a soccer fan, love soccer season. Crisp air, windy weather, orange leaves, foliage, pumpkin pie and carving pumpkins. If all goes according to plan tonight, maybe we'll have some playoff baseball to look forward to after this evening. And for all you Red Sox fans, thanks for being here. We'll try to get out right at 8:30, so you won't miss too much of the game. Walking my dog on the beach after September 30th. Thanksgiving, fall leaves, the temperature. I love the crisp air myself as well. Great. Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing that with us. And thanks to all of you for being here. Feel free to keep dropping stuff in there if you haven't had a chance to share yet. But I will move on to our goals for the workshop tonight. So our goals this evening are to introduce Marblehead's net zero roadmap process that Jason kind of outlined for us and the work to date. He talked about the climate vision, and we really see this workshop and this planning process that we're going through as a continuation of the work that we started with the Marblehead climate vision. So we want to gather feedback from you all to inform the town's roadmap and its vision and goals for climate action, and to sort of flesh out the high level strategies that we included in the climate visioning document. Then we want to understand, what your priorities are for the plan, and really kind of encourage participation throughout the planning process. So those are our goals. So we're going to start the evening with sort of a creative exercise that will be some sort of familiar to some of you who attended our visioning session last June. We've tweaked it slightly because we didn't want to ask you to do the same exact activity. But that'll sort of help get your minds in a sort of a creative headspace. And then I'm going to go through a quick kind of context presentation to ground us in where this work is starting and where we're hoping to get with it. And then we will have breakout discussions. So we'll break you out into small groups. We'll have 5 different groups of 9 to 10 people each. And then that'll be the bulk of our time together. We're going to try to give you 30 to 40 minutes in those breakout groups to really dive into the details about what should go into Marblehead's net zero roadmap. And then we'll bring everybody back together to do a quick report out, and then we'll talk a little bit about the next steps. And as I said, we'll try to wrap up by 8:30 at the latest, and get you all out of here on time. Can I get a thumbs up? I just got a chat from somebody saying that they were having trouble seeing the screen. Is anybody else having trouble seeing? Okay.
Adjust your video settings. So your Zoom should have a view options at the top. So you can click view options, and you should choose, usually under Zoom ratio, choose fit to window, and that should hopefully fix it if you have any sizing issues.
Kara Goodman, Zoom expert, everybody. That's a great transition into, I want to take a quick moment to introduce the team from Mapc that's here with us tonight. I introduced myself, I'm Brooks. Kara is a clean energy specialist on the team and will also be our Zoom whiz for the evening. So thanks Kara, and thanks for that tip. And then Van Du from our environmental department is here as well, and Julie Curdy, who's a clean energy and climate strategy manager and senior planner. So they are going to be your guides for some of the breakout discussions, as well as Jason and Becky Curran from the town as well. Also want to take a moment to acknowledge the members of the Green Marblehead Committee who have been working really hard on this project and worked really hard on the Marblehead Climate Vision. So they're working really hard on your behalf to help sort of map the path forward on climate action. So thanks to everybody who's been involved in that work. Just some quick caretaking announcements. If you can, please share your name through Zoom and have your camera on. If you feel comfortable, no pressure to do that, but we love to see your faces. Participants are going to be muted until the breakout groups, just to minimize background noise. And if you have questions or any challenges or comments in the full group discussion, feel free to use the chat for that. When we go into breakouts and for the group discussion, just want to encourage you all to use the sort of step up, step back principle so that we can hear from everyone and share airtime. And just a reminder that there are no bad ideas and no stupid questions. So we want to hear everything. Feel free to ask any questions that you have, clarifying questions or probing questions. So those are our discussion guidelines. With that, we're going to go into our icebreaker. So Kara, can I ask you to drop the link in the chat while I am introducing the prompt here? So we're going to do a postcard from the future activity. This is a sort of a visioning exercise that I really like to do. And some of you will remember last year, we asked you to think about what the whole community of Marblehead might look like in 2040 or 2050 after we've solved climate change and everything's good to go. So because this time around, we want to get a little into some more detail and to kind of, last year we were asking why and when, and this year I think we really want to ask and answer the how of how we're going to get to carbon neutral or net zero emissions by 2040, which is your local goal. So your prompt is, you are writing a postcard from your future self to your current self in 2021. Consider your favorite building in Marblehead. So this is Abbott Hall. Think about what has changed in 2040 once Marblehead has reached its carbon neutrality goal. What's the same? How is it powered now? How is it heated? What's better? What's worse about that building? And how did the changes help or hinder the town's path toward carbon neutrality? So this is, used Abbott Hall as a sort of an emblematic example here, thinking about the past and the present and the future. In the past, maybe Abbott Hall was heated with wood or coal or something like that. With the renovations that just happened, it's much more efficient and probably using natural gas now. Who knows what systems might be in place in 2040, but that's just an example. So want you all to think about your favorite building. What does it look like in 2040? How did it help Marblehead reach its carbon neutrality goal? And so with that, I'm gonna put on some music and give you all about 5 minutes to silently think and write. And if you go to mapc/Marblehead postcard, all lowercase, all one word, Marblehead postcard, or click the link in the chat that Kara posted, you will be taken to the place where you can enter your answers to that, and then we'll come back to this in a little bit. So I'll put the music on. Happy writing. All right, thank you everyone. I see a couple in the chat there as well. So thanks for participating in that little visioning exercise. And so with that, so what is net zero? Why are we talking about this, and what do we mean when we say net zero? So I guess the first thing I'll say is that we'll use net zero and carbon neutral interchangeably because they mean more or less the same thing. But So when we think about net zero planning, we mean the development of community-wide goals, strategies, and processes that enable a municipality to achieve net zero emissions. And to achieve net zero, a community needs to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions as much as possible, and then balance out any remaining emissions through greenhouse gas removal. So that could be through carbon offsets or sequestration efforts that can happen inside or outside of Marblehead's boundaries. But the closer to home those emission reductions and removal happen, the better. So we talked a lot, at the session that we did, the visioning session last June, about the global context and the fact that climate change is happening now and that we need to act immediately to avoid the worst of climate change, even though we're already starting to see impacts. But I also just wanted to give some updates about kind of the sort of statewide context and things that have changed, and then where Marblehead sits in the regional perspective, and then I can kind of give an overview. If you haven't had a chance to read the Marblehead Climate Vision yet, I'll talk about what's included in that. So one of the sort of big exciting developments from earlier this year is that Massachusetts passed a new climate law that we call the 2050 Roadmap Law. And that bill does a whole bunch of different things, but a few of the highlights there and most relevant pieces there. One is that it requires us to reach net zero emissions here in Massachusetts by 2050. And it also requires a 50% emissions reduction by 2030. And it establishes sort of subsector goals for buildings and transportation that we also have to meet by law. And relevant to Marblehead and MMLD, it requires municipal light plants to purchase 50% of their power from non-carbon sources by 2030, and to get to net zero emissions by 2050. So aligning with statewide goals there. And that's new. MLPs have not been required to meet the statewide renewable portfolio standard. So that's a big deal and an exciting development, and one that MMLD supported. And then there's a bunch of other good stuff, including a new stretch energy code, efficiency standards for appliances, defines what environmental justice means to the state for the first time, includes funding for workforce development, and lots more. There's a good summary of what's in it and why municipalities should care about it on our on MAPC's website, on our blog. So maybe we can dig that up and share it with you if you're interested in more information, but just wanted to give an overview of what's in that exciting new piece of legislation. So you all are in good company here in Greater Boston as well. Jason mentioned the 3 other MLP communities that are all going through a similar net zero planning process with Marblehead. And overall, about a quarter of the municipalities in the region have or are developing climate action plans like Marblehead is doing now. About a third have adopted goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, like your 2040 carbon neutrality goal. And 2/3 have volunteer committees dedicated to climate sustainability or energy issues, like the Green Marblehead Committee. So you're in good company, and I think Marblehead is really leading the way in many ways here. So Jason mentioned the Marblehead Climate Vision and the visioning process that we went through last year, and the fact that it was adopted by the Board of Selectmen in November 2020. And just a little more detail on that process. Many of you were involved in it. Thank you for your engagement, for attending the visioning session and responding to our survey. We had over 450 people respond to the survey, and heard a lot about efficient buildings, walking and biking infrastructure, gas leaks, a hot topic, and tree planting, among other issues. And this is sort of a summary of some of the themes from the survey that we did. And we took all of that input and then wrote the Marblehead Climate Vision, which includes sort of the summary of that process, some information about municipal energy use, and then the real heart of it is the key strategies for Marblehead to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions and take action on climate. And the sort of the highlights of that are that we said that Marblehead should significantly increase the energy efficiency of its buildings, work to electrify heating, transportation, and other end uses like cooking, transition to 100% carbon-free electricity in the MMLD portfolio. And then there were other strategies named, including encouraging walking and biking as alternatives to car travel, carbon sequestration for planting more trees, and also waste reduction. So all good strategies, fairly, I think, well aligned with the best practices and a lot of what other communities in the region are considering. And a really good kind of high level list of strategies for how Marblehead is going to tackle its emissions at the local level. And so our job in this project is to really flesh out how Marblehead can start making progress to meet its carbon neutrality goal, and to really lay out the tactics and the specific actions and ordinances or programs or incentives that you all are going to need to reach that 2040 carbon neutrality target. So we started this project by conducting a greenhouse gas emissions inventory. So we gathered data from the census and from MMLD and from National Grid and the town, and we put that all together in a tool that MAPC has created to help communities evaluate their emissions picture locally. And what we found is that overall, Marblehead, and so this is data for 2017, which is the most recent year that we could find complete information. In 2017, Marblehead emitted 161,130 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. And for reference, that's about 7 to 8 metric tons of CO2, 7.8 per person in Marblehead. So similar to Winchester, if that gives you a sense, sort of on a per capita basis. And we see here in the slide that residential buildings are the largest source of emissions, getting close to 50% if you put the commercial and industrial buildings in there. Buildings account for over half of your total greenhouse gas emissions. And passenger vehicles are also a pretty significant source of emissions, about a third as well. And then looking at the breakdown in buildings, so buildings are over half of your emissions, and this is where the fuel breakdown is. So natural gas emissions from direct combustion in building make up about 55% of that half that's coming from buildings, and then fuel oil is still a pretty big piece of that pie as well, and maybe a place for us to target in thinking about ways to reduce emissions in the near term. So Van, is that our
That is
Word
your
cloud?
word cloud.
Excellent. Okay, so I'll before we cover this, I will pause briefly. We have a little time. If folks have questions or yeah, clarifying questions or comments on the presentation or on the results of the inventory, we can take those now in the chat, or if folks want to raise their hand in Zoom or on the video. We have a couple of minutes for questions if folks have any, and then we can summarize the result of your postcards, and then we'll break out into groups. So any questions? Yeah, so Joe Kowalik asks that what is the total for CO2 emissions for the town? It's 161,130 metric tons of CO2 equivalent. Somebody asks in a private message, we have goals, but how exactly are we going to enforce them? Well, that's a good question, and I think that's for us to answer through this process. And I think what we're going to be asking you all to help us figure out tonight is how do we want to reach that goal, and what tactics and strategies do we want to use to reach the goal. So we have a question here in the chat. How does the Peabody Peaker plant, the 2015A project, a new fossil fuel plant with a 30-year lifespan, which hasn't yet broken ground, fit into the goal of reaching net zero by 2050? I can take a shot at that. We've had discussions about that at the Green Marblehead Committee. And I think one of the things that I've heard from MMLD is that the hope is that that plant would be used fairly minimally for the hottest days of the year when demand is highest, and also that potentially in the future that it could be switched to green hydrogen. Although I also have been closely tracking the development of green hydrogen as a technology, and I think the high level takeaway is that we have a long way to go before that's a viable scaled up solution for power generation, and that generating green hydrogen and then transmitting it to other places to be burned for generating electricity may not be the best use of hydrogen as a resource. So thank you for that question, Kathy. Question here from Ed Nilsson. Does the Marblehead emission amount include exhaust from the increasing number of motorboats in the harbor during the summer? I believe the answer to that is no, Ed. We did account for some off-road vehicles in the inventory, but we didn't have a great way to get all of the data for boats. So that may be something that we would want to incorporate in a future iteration of this, and it's something that the Green Marblehead Committee has talked about a little bit in some of their meetings. So yeah, if folks are really interested to see the numbers from boats, we're not 100% sure that we can get access to those data easily, but maybe something that we can work into a future iteration of the inventory. So I think with that, I'm going to move us along. I may keep looking at the questions in the chat, and I can answer some of those in the chat for you, or if other members of the committee want to jump in the chat and throw in answers, feel free. But I'm going to move along. So Van, can I turn it over to you to share any impressions from the early results on the visioning exercise?
Sure thing. So what you see here are just some keywords more popular words that get pulled into this cloud based on the responses that we received so far. I want to share a few of the responses that we've received that anonymously, and they're super great. And I think they'll reflect kind of the words, the big bubble we see here. So the first one, in 2040, there are far fewer cars and trucks. The streets are quiet because all motorized vehicles are powered by electricity. There is more room in the streets for bicycles. There are charging stations everywhere for battery-powered cars and trucks. There are no gas-powered leaf blowers, lawn mowers, or any landscaping equipment, resulting in much less noise pollution. So happy to see more trees around community center and how it has been re-engineered to be more efficient and to fit into the scenery better. The fact that all the HVAC is now purely run on clean energy is really nice, and that it's been refurbished to be more of a sealed building is wonderful. Less energy loss and more effective use of the space. Dear ... I'm protecting the person's name. I am writing to you from the future. When you look at Marblehead, not much has changed on the outside, but what you don't see is all the great technology hidden within the buildings. All roofs have now solar shingles with battery banks tucked into where your furnace used to be. With all that free energy, everything is running on solar and battery. I now have an electric boat that we cruise around the harbor in. I love my new electric Volkswagens. Our house is now heated with a mini split system that keeps you cool in the summer and warm in the winter. No more fighting about the temperature as the energy is free. So those are just some quick highlight I want to share with everyone.
Thanks, Van. And thank you all for submitting those responses. Really inspiring to hear what some of you all are thinking. So with that, I think I will send us off. Kara, can I ask you to send folks into breakout rooms? So we're going to send you off. We're going to give you until, let's say, until 8:15 in your breakout group. So you'll have about 35 minutes together. And I guess, yeah, you're hopping in. So enjoy. Thank you for being here. Thanks for your thoughts. And we'll be back at 8:15. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for participating in those breakout discussions. I used my host privilege to hop around from room to room and listen in, and got a pretty good sense of where the conversations were going. It sounds like you all had some really great ideas. I'm going to ask the facilitators if they can take a second now to drop their top 2 or 3 takeaways from their groups into the chat for us, so that you all can see what other groups discussed. And then I might pick on 1 or 2 of the facilitators to share out loud some of what they heard from their hive mind brain trusts in the breakout group. So facilitators, if you can drop your takeaways in the chat, that would be great. And if you would rather just come off mute and say it out loud, you're welcome to do that as well. All right, so from Kara's group, how can public schools, community colleges, and technical schools contribute to job training such as solar and heat pump installations? Love that. We're going to need a lot more workers and people to do the work of transitioning off of fossil fuels and to the clean energy future. And that could be a real opportunity for job creation and job training locally. Julie says group 5 covered a lot. We talked a lot about electrifying buses and municipal vehicles, tapping ocean carbon sequestration, providing income-based incentives for air source heat pumps, electric vehicles, and MMLD allowing for more solar and battery interconnection, and to stop selling its RECs, which is the way that you can take credit for the renewable energy that the MMLD is producing. Thanks, Julie. Simon says kelp farming for sequestration. I love that idea, and that's something that friends of mine in Maine have been working on for a while. It's a great way you can sequester carbon through kelp farming, and you can also offset the impacts of ocean acidification by growing kelp. Van says ensure affordability when transitioning to clean energy. We need more education and outreach efforts to make sure community members are aware of all the offers available and the resources for transitioning to net zero. And Kara says they also talked about continuing remote meetings and other activities to reduce commuting, potential to designate more one-way streets to discourage cars, allowing for more multifamily housing development, conversions for in-law apartments. Great. So who is sharing their screen? If I could ask you to stop doing that. Perfect. Great. So if any of the facilitators or anybody else wants to share stuff, please feel free to continue doing that. Or if anybody wants to explain anything, feel free to jump in. But one of the themes that I hear from those takeaways in the chat and that I heard from jumping into the conversations was that one of the things that we need to focus on in this plan is how can we make it easier for people in Marblehead to make good choices on their own. And that's one thing that we've talked a lot about in the Green Marblehead Committee meetings is this balance between collective action and individual action, and the pathway to reaching carbon neutrality. It's going to require systemic change and structural change, but it's also going to require a lot of individual boilers switching to heat pumps and individual vehicles going from a big gasoline powered SUV to an electric vehicle. But if we think about making it easier to bike or to get around by bike or to hook up your solar panels or your battery storage system, all of this is really about just making it easier for people to electrify, to walk, to bike, to make the individual choices that we all are going to be needing to make, and those changes in the next 20 years, but also to make the decisions at the community-wide scale. Deciding to make a road a one-way street to make it safer to bike on, that's a community-level collective action decision. Deciding to build more affordable housing or make it easier to build efficient affordable housing, that's a community level decision. So I really like the sort of the themes that I'm hearing about the balance between collective action and individual action, and also that we need to find ways to clear the obstacles out of the way, and as we're developing this roadmap, to make sure that our path to carbon neutrality is as clear as possible, and that the sailing is relatively smooth. I'll mix road and nautical metaphors there. Okay, so it's 8:24. It's not even, it's the bottom of the first inning for any of you Red Sox fans out there, so you haven't missed much of the game. We'll wrap up here quickly. I'm gonna share my screen, talk a little bit about what comes next, and then we will adjourn for the evening. So our next steps. So we are going to take all of the great feedback and thoughts that you have provided this evening, the Green Marblehead Committee will take all of that, digest it, and think about it, and then we will work over the course of this fall and into the winter on drafting the net zero roadmap for Marblehead. And then once we have a solid draft of that plan, we'll come back to you all to gather feedback. Might be a workshop like this, might be an online open house that some of you might have been participated in recently, where you have a chance to sort of interact with the sort of the proposals in the plan and provide feedback to specific actions and proposed strategies. And then we'll work to finalize the net zero roadmap by spring of 2022. Our grant to do this work ends in June, so you'll have it before then. And but there will be more opportunities for you all to weigh in on this process. In the meantime, the Green Marblehead Committee meets monthly, and the information about those meetings is posted on the town website. They're public meetings open to anyone. If you are excited about what you heard here tonight, would encourage you to join us for one of those meetings. And I guess with that, speaking of being excited about this, as a little closing exercise, I'll invite you to put something in the chat that excites you most about Marblehead's net zero work, or what you talked about this evening. What are you feeling most excited about at this point? Protecting our beautiful town and planet for our children and grandchildren and ourselves. Climate change is already happening, so the more we do now, the better off we'll be in the short and the long term. When I come back to visit Marblehead and see a lot of changes in a few years, love that. Great energy, great ideas, says John Livermore, Green Marblehead Committee member. Mimi Hollister says it feels like something will indeed happen. Yes, that's what we're here to do. Make things happen. An opportunity to be role models for other communities in the state. Love that, Mark. And I'll say that your 2040 carbon neutrality date is one of the soonest I've seen, and so it's an ambitious goal, but I think you can do it, and I think it's really well aligned with what we know about the fact that we really need to front load our actions on this, because we've delayed so long that we have a very small carbon budget left to burn, and we need to start making progress as soon as possible. Louise from Sustainable Marblehead says the idea that Marblehead will once again become quiet and a lovely place to walk and bike. Yeah, internal combustion engines are noisy, and walking and biking are lovely. That we have town officials at this meeting who will help to make this vision a reality. Yes, huge props to the town officials, Jason and committee members and everybody who's supporting this. Alexa, it's been great to see the support from the town level. Excited for cleaner air, engaging all the students in Marblehead Public School. Yeah, we should think about, we might do a specific focus group or a workshop for students if we want to do that later in the process. I think that could be really exciting. Great. Well, thank you all. These are great ideas. I'm gonna save the chat here. It's really great to hear what you all are excited about. With that, it's 8:29. I think we covered everything. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here so I can see all your faces. Thank you, everyone. It's been a real pleasure to be here with you tonight. Thanks for all your great ideas. Thanks for joining us. Go Red Sox. Stay tuned, and we'll be reporting back to you soon with the draft of the net zero roadmap. Jason, anything you want to say before we wrap?
No, this was exciting. This was
Great.
great.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you,
Thanks.
everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank you,
Brooks.
Brooks.
Take care all.
Brooks, you said you are going to save the chat, right?
Yes, I think I'm
Okay,
just
great.
I'm just getting thank yous now, so I'll go ahead and
Great.
save it.
All right. Thank you
Perfect.
so much.
And
Thanks,
Brooks,
Alexa.
I wondered, is the, could the recording be available? I'd put that on our website maybe, or?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and stop recording now. So this is the end of the program here.